from 37 to send Washington to the final 8. The Washington Commanders off the upright, and it is in! They fight their way to the divisional round!
Wildcard weekend is officially passed, and now we're going to review the games, and we're going to talk about what I'm going to take from it and look at the matchups upcoming for the divisional round and do our predictions. If you guys do enjoy, drop a like, subscribe if you guys are new, and let's jump straight into it. So kicking things off with the Chargers and the Texans. This game, I don't have much to really say about it other than Justin Herbert just did not play well. And it's not like CJ Stroud and the Texans played absolutely out of their minds, but Justin Herbert threw 4 picks, and that is just absolutely unacceptable from your starting quarterback to throw 4 interceptions. It very rarely will end in a victory when your quarterback throws 4 interceptions. The only other time I can see that happening or have seen that happening is when Trevor Lawrence did it, funny enough, against the Chargers just a couple years ago when he threw 4 interceptions in one half, but turned around and threw 4 touchdowns in the second half and led a comeback. So I don't know. It just, Justin Herbert, I've never seen him play that badly. And honestly, I know there was a lot of questions about whether is he elite or not, and is he one of the top quarterbacks. And while I do think he is a top 10 quarterback, I do think this shows the gap between him and what we consider the elite of the elite quarterbacks in the league. As for the Ravens and the Steelers, this was another loss for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I think some serious changes need to come from the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've got to change something. I don't know if it's the coaching, I don't know if it's the personnel, but something has to change in Pittsburgh because you've lost 6 straight playoff games. You haven't won one in nearly a decade, and not having a losing record in the last pretty much almost 2 decades is nice, but does it really matter when you're not winning? You're not even getting wins in the playoffs, and the Steelers are they're just kind of a middling team. They're never going to be bad enough to get elite draft picks, but they're also never good enough to actually contend in the AFC, especially when you've got guys like Josh Allen, you've got Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson in your division in the middle of their primes. Patrick Mahomes, of course. You got elite quarterbacks. The best quarterbacks in the NFL are all in your conference. It's obviously going to be extremely difficult for the Steelers to ever make a Super Bowl in this generation of quarterbacks, but when you at least look at the field of the playoffs, the Steelers should at least be able to win a playoff game. I mean, think about it. Every team in their division has at least won a playoff game, and including the Browns. So now the Steelers, you almost want to make a joke about them being the laughingstock of the AFC North because every team has won a playoff game in the 2020s except them. So things have to change in Pittsburgh. As for the Ravens, they look really good. That rushing attack is 100% the best in the league, and Ravens versus Bills is going to be the best game of the entire playoffs. So next up is Bills versus Broncos. This is going to be another game I don't really spend too much time on. The Bills dominated in this game. The Broncos just could not get a stop to save their lives in this game. There looked like there may have been a little hope early on, but Buffalo ended up expanding the lead and pretty much running away with this one. Bo Nix looked pretty solid, honestly, in his first playoff debut. Despite the fact the team didn't play that well, especially on the defensive side of the ball, I think the Broncos have found their franchise quarterback, and I think the Broncos are going to be fine. I think they're going to make whatever changes they need in the offseason, and I think they'll be back next year as an actual competitive team. I think Denver fans have a lot to look forward to. As for the Bills, I think they showed a lot this week. I think them and the Ravens are going to have an amazing game. I think we might be getting an all-time classic. So honestly, I don't really have anything negative to say about the Bills or the Ravens, so I can't wait to go in depth with my prediction there. Next is going to be the Eagles and the Packers, and for the Packers, they just looked rough. Their offense just looked like they were struggling at every turn. Green Bay just didn't look good. Jordan Love threw 3 interceptions, and it just did not look good for the Green Bay Packers. I think they 100% need a solidified, legitimate wide receiver 1. I don't think they have a legitimate wide receiver 1. I think they have a bunch of solid young receivers, but Green Bay needs a legitimate number 1 on that team. And I think the Packers will have a lot of issues fixed from there. They have a really good rushing attack, but I think injuries also played a part in this game for the Packers, but overall, there needs to be some changes, whether that be with coaching and with their receiver room. They need to go and get maybe some better weapons over there. As for the Eagles, they looked pretty solid. I don't think this was their best game. I think they're going to play better. and that should be scary. I think the Eagles are a top 3, top 2 team in the NFC, and I believe they have a real good shot of getting to the Super Bowl. So they look good in this game, and as long as they continue to improve, I like their chances. Commanders and Bucks was easily the best game of the wild card, and I think when you really look at both of those games, Jaden Daniels is 100% one of the best young quarterbacks, and he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL moving forward. It is just a big deal for the Commanders to be able to have won this game, because they finally get their first playoff win since 2005. And it is just, it's honestly, I can only be happy for the Washington, D.C. area and the surrounding areas who root for the Commanders, because to get this big of a win is just, it's crazy. They beat Tampa Bay. I chose Tampa Bay. I thought experience was going to be the factor, but that Commanders team is very good. But their run defense stinks, and they're going to play a team in the Lions who has an elite rushing attack. And honestly, I don't know how the Commanders are going to deal with that. But I do believe that could be a low-key good game. If the Commanders somehow catch the Lions off guard, that would honestly be one of the biggest upsets of the 2020s. As to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think this clearly shows the ceiling that's on this team. I think we all see that this is not a bad team. This is a playoff team, and when you look at the NFC South, this is the best team in that division. But this team has clearly got a ceiling on it, and it's not a very high ceiling. At best, it's a playoff win at best in certain situations. But that's just kind of where Tampa Bay is, and they need to make some changes because their ceiling is not very high, and to be honest, I think they're at their ceiling as it is. Lions, and he didn't play well against the Rams, and funny enough, those are the only 2 teams that even beat the Minnesota Vikings this year. The Lions beating the Vikings twice, and the Rams beating the Vikings twice as well. I think it has got to suck to know that pretty much every other team you had no issues beating, but the 2 teams that you lost to ended up being the 2 teams that pretty much ended your season. And I think it makes the question of, does Minnesota bring back Sam Darnold, a little trickier. There was starting to be reports of J.J. McCarthy potentially being traded in the offseason because of how well Sam Darnold was playing for the Vikings. And now that you just kind of seen him wet the bed against the Lions and then the Rams in the playoffs, it really makes you put things into perspective. I think Minnesota has a really good team. I think they should go with J.J. McCarthy next year. I would expect that he ends up being the starter. I would think that Minnesota doesn't necessarily want to lose Darnold for nothing, but more than likely another team is going to take a chance on him. I don't know whether that will be as a legitimate starter or a bridge quarterback, but I think Sam Darnold more than likely is going to be a bridge quarterback for a different team. As for the Rams, they looked pretty good. Obviously, their pass rush looks like it can get physical. They were creating turnovers, and that defense can score. That defense did a lot of work against the Vikings. And I believe the Rams are going to be a very, very tough opponent. And they have a legitimate chance. I think the Rams have a legit shot to beat the Eagles. I think they have a good enough team. And honestly, they're one of the best ran organizations in the NFL, considering they haven't had first round picks at all. And they've been able to retool a playoff team after they went all in to make a Super Bowl team just a couple years ago. So we're going to hop into my playoff predictions for the second round. We're going to make this pretty quick. Chiefs and Texans, I think this is going to be a pretty solid game. Houston's been a little shaky. They look pretty good in the second half against the Chargers, but I don't know if we're going to get version of the Texans. If we get that version of the Texans, there's a legit chance. If we're going to get the first half from when they play the Chargers, I don't really like their chances, but ultimately I'm going to go with the Chiefs. I'm going to go with Patrick Mahomes. I trust him at Arrowhead, and I think the Chiefs are going to win that game. Next, you got Bills and Ravens. This is probably going to be the best game of the entire second round and maybe even the playoffs. I know a lot of people are looking forward to this game, especially with the implications. You got Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, who are your MVP front runners. But I think this is going to be a legacy game for both of these guys. Both of these guys have to win this game, obviously, because time is running out. And obviously, they're not old or anything. They probably aren't going anywhere. But obviously, people are holding them to a standard where they obviously need to come out and win a Super Bowl. So I believe, ultimately, I like the Ravens. I like their team a little bit better than Buffalo. I think the Bills obviously are a great team. Josh Allen is having a heck of a season, but I like Lamar Jackson. I like the Ravens. I like that rushing attack. I like everything that they're doing over there. And I think the Ravens narrowly beat the Bills and get to the AFC title game. Next up, you got the Lions and the Commanders. Now, I think this might be the most lopsided game, and I'm going to go with the Lions. I don't think the Commanders are going to be able to stop that run defense, and the Lions do like running the ball. I think the Lions have the best offense in the league, and I don't really think there's much that the Commanders can do. I think they've had a great season, fantastic season to really build on, but I like the Lions in this game. Next, we got the Eagles and the Rams. Now, I think this game is going to be a lot closer than a lot of people think. I think that Rams defense is definitely better than Green Bay's, especially that pass rush. And I think the Eagles are going to have trouble, especially if they play the same way they played against the Packers. They didn't play bad, but they're going to need to play better. And I do believe that this Rams team is a better team than the Green Bay Packers are. And they're not dealing with nearly as many injuries as the Packers were. So ultimately, though, I still have the Eagles barely winning this game. I do think the Rams are a good team. I think they'll keep it close, but I don't think they're good enough on offense to be able to beat the Eagles. And I think the Eagles are going to be able to win this game. So what do you guys think is going to be the AFC and NFC championship game? Let me know in the comments below, and drop a like on this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you guys are new, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. Peace.